Chapter 281, Charging into the enemy's ranks. The experts that traversing 4Cs was referring to were of course not just the men of young Master's elite, and many other mercenaries were summoned to the front as well. Traversing 4Cs intended to form a team of elites to break through the monsters' ranks and observe how the monsters would react after. Young Master's elite soon arrived to the front of the expedition. Once Oathless Sword spotted the experts of every mercenary group arrive, he happily told them, "We'll be relying on you esteemed experts this time around." Exactly as expected. Young Master Han stated dryly on the mercenary channel. Tasking the mercenaries with this, they clearly intend to use us as cannon fodders. Brother Assist could also read between the lines. It can't be helped, we have to do it, anyhow, Sword Demon calmly commented. Indeed, the mercenaries could do nothing about this. Although they knew that they were being treated as no more than cannon fodders, they had no choice but to charge into the fray. "Everyone, my skill can only last for 25 seconds, so please use the time wisely and fight hard." Silver Moon was the one who spoke this time, informing those present of his party ride skill. Young Master's elite had never expected that a day would come where they would have the chance to experience Silver Moon's skill, and each of them sighed at how ever-changing life was. "But if there is someone assisting me, this skill duration can last a bit longer," Silver Moon continued. Everyone did not know why he had said this. Even Oathless Sword bewilderedly asked, "Silver Moon bro, what do you mean by that?" Gufei followed Silver Moon's gaze and realized that the latter was looking at Sakurazaka Muni's group. Vast Lushness was currently in it. Is he talking about her? Gufei thought to himself. This was when he saw Vast Lushness turn her head to Silver Moon. She obviously heard his words, yet she merely raised a hand to flip him off with a face devoid of any expression. Gufei chuckled at this. Turning his head to look at Silver Moon, he heard the latter say, "Nothing. I'm just afraid of my skill getting interrupted before its duration expires as a result of my death." "Oh, you don't have to worry about that." Oathless Sword called two priests over and pointed to Silver Moon. "You two are assigned to Silver Moon bro." Assigning two priests to a lone man clearly showed the importance traversing 4Cs put on Silver Moon during this group fight. Melee job classes, please prepare yourselves. Archers and mages, lend assistance at your discretion. Please be careful, though, and try not to injure your allies, the Commander-in-Chief, Youthful Reflection, ordered. Following this, warriors, thieves, and fighters came forward and formed a party together. Knights began to bestow blessings on them while some priests mixed within. Mages and archers, meanwhile, retreated to the back of the formation and waited. Due to how narrow the mountain path was, their strategic retreat placed them far from the upcoming fight and essentially out of sight from the battlefield ahead. "What blessing do you want?" Brother Assist asked Gufei with a smile. Gufei drove his sword into the ground as he grandly stood within the ranks of the melee job classes. The surrounding players gazed at him in awe as they whispered to one another, "Is he really the close combat mage?" Luo approached him with her staff held aloft, grinning cheekily. "You want a priest all to yourself?" With that, he wafted on Gufei. "Stop wasting your mana," Gufei said weakly, adding, "You should focus your attention on the ladies, instead. I don't think they'd need my help at all." Luo giggled. Turning his gaze over, Gufei saw a crowd of priests attentively attending to Svelte Dancer, July, Willow, Lilai, June's Rain, and the other ladies who were going to participate in the fight. "It's up to you, then." Gufei had nothing more to say and merely focused his attention on the fight ahead. Meters ahead, a group of mountain bandits was blocking the mountain path. If they were to break through the monsters' ranks here, the terrain would open up into a wide plain ahead, which would let them spread out accordingly and confront the level 30 monsters fearlessly. "Isn't a boss supposed to be in command here?" "Where is he?" Gufei asked. "Isn't that the one?" Luo pointed to somewhere in front. Gufei looked at where she was pointing and spotted a mountain bandit standing distinctively from its kind. Upon closer examination, Gufei made a shocking discovery. "Isn't that Sato?" "Man, he sure looks different with his clothes on." The players around him gave him a furtive glance. Just what sort of unspeakable relationship did this man have with the mountain bandit leader Sato? Time waited for no man. Their trek through the Oolong mountain range had cost them considerable time, especially if they included the series of crevasses that they had crossed, Plenty of players were already anxious to log off by this time. After making the necessary preparations, youthful reflection informed them of the fighting stratagem: charge in from their flanks, but don't immediately engage their boss. The players rubbed their fists in anticipation as youthful reflection raised his arm out. Archers of traversing 4 seas, get ready. It's time to serve the enemies some appetizers. Fire! With that command, an entire wave of arrows from behind sailed over the heads of the mercenaries and toward the group of mountain bandits ahead. Charge! The melee job classes roared in unison. Waving their weapons at hand, they ran after the hail of arrows and dove straight to the monsters. Silver Moon raised his King's Blade and was about to activate King's command when 2 figures, red and black, flitted out from the team and toward the mountain bandits ahead of everyone else. Youthful reflection slapped his thigh in anger. This ragtag army of players really would not do. There was not even an ounce of discipline in them. Don't charge in alone. Stay in your formation. As he yelled this out, the 2 figures exchanged looks before shouting back in unison, keep up, then. How were they going to keep up, though? With so many low agility warriors in the melee team, keeping up with Gouffé and Sveltdancer was hardly possible even if they doped themselves. Players like the speedster Sword Demon had the ability to keep up, but they understood the importance of matching their speed to the main attacking force. It was not that Gouffé did not understand this concept as well. He had originally not intended to rush out like this, yet Sveltdancer Mad-Ford had strongly reminded him of their days fighting in the Guild vs Guild tournament for Amethyst Rebirth, and before he knew it, he had dashed forward as well in a burst of adrenaline. The archers' arrows had rained upon the enemy's ranks by now. The mountain bandits that were attacked would naturally retaliate accordingly. With a wave of Sato's saber, the mountain bandits' battle cry rang through the fighting field as they charged forward. These monsters appeared before Gouffé and Sveltdancer in a short while. Twin incineration. Incinerate. This chanting was accompanied by the pivoting of Gouffé's whole body as he advanced forward. Once he was within the mountain bandits' ranks, he quickly brandished his sword about, causing a circle of flames to emerge and leaving all the players watching tongue-tied. Was this twin incineration or cyclone? Sveltdancer was naturally no slouch. With just basic attacks, she efficiently took down the nearby mountain bandits. When Gouffé's twin incineration ended, Sveltdancer was already plunging her dagger into a mountain bandit beside him as she happily said, "Hee hee, I bet your skill is on cooldown." Everyone was dumbfounded by their display of indomitable strength. Even youthful reflection slapped his thigh raw. Damn! How can these 2 seamlessly coordinate with each other despite being so ill-disciplined? Gouffé was still a force to be reckoned with despite his lack of any ready spells, and his sword elegantly slashed the mountain bandits around him until they were bloodied. He held half of the charging monsters by himself while Sveltdancer took care of the other half. His skill cooldown soon ended. "Excuse me," Gouffé said. Sveltdancer then wordlessly brought her massacre to the other side as Gouffé cleared up another group of mountain bandits around him with a spell. Youthful reflection slapped his thigh once more as he roared at the 2 players. Flank them! Flank them! The other players returned to their senses and began engaging the mountain bandits earnestly as well. They were infected by Gouffé and Sveltdancer's bloodlust and fought the monsters with equal ferociousness. The level 30 monsters appeared insignificant in the face of these experts. The mountain bandit leader Saito grandly wielded his saber and the monsters started retreating. All the players were elated. That was really easy. Was there even a need to surround them? Everyone should just butcher them right here and right now. Just as the players thought that they could force their way within the mountain bandits' ranks and begin the slaughter, Sato suddenly raised his saber. Following this, his underlings immediately became invigorated, thundered their battle cry, and threw themselves at the players. The players suddenly found themselves under attack from all sides. When they calmed themselves enough to assess the situation that they were in, they could only utter one word: fuck. It's a pocket formation. Youthful reflection slapped his thigh for who knew how many times. Those mountain bandits quickly retreated once they could no longer bear the players' assault. This forced the players to push inward, creating a situation that allowed the mountain bandits to encircle them from all sides. This tactic that allowed the enemies to attack them in an isolated pocket was very similar to the one that Traversing 4 Seas had previously used to deal with the mountain bandits in New Long Cave. Currently, It was entirely unknown if the formation was intentionally employed by the monsters. At any rate, the players that were presently surrounded from all sides were in trouble. Silver Moon's King's command eventually ended and the players' initially fearsome push got taken down a notch. Silver Moon was consuming fruit within their ranks, and everyone fervently hoped for him to immediately replenish his mana so that he could use the party-wide skill once more. However, Silver Moon could only laugh to himself bitterly. Even if his mana was replenished, he would have to wait for his skill's 10-minute cooldown to end still. Could this fight even last for 10 minutes? When a row of bandits fell, another row would immediately replace it, sealing the players within the monster's isolated pocket with no escape in sight. Youthful Reflection anxiously ordered the players to charge out of the enemy's encirclement. While he knew that the players were capable of contending with the enemies, their current situation would certainly force them into a battle of attrition. These monsters had no fear of death, so it was easy for them to endlessly replenish their front line as long as there were still mountain bandits alive. In contrast, the players could not use such a sacrificial method. As such, those who ran out of mana could only retreat and be replaced by new players to prevent their defense line from collapsing. The crux of the problem soon became apparent. This narrow mountain road did not give the players enough space to rotate effectively. This was precisely why Youthful Reflection had ordered the players to break through the mountain bandits' encirclement. At the moment, only Goofy and Svelte Dancer seemed to possess the ability to force their way out of the enemy's encirclement. The two's efficiency at clearing the mountain bandits was exceptionally high. Whenever Goofy cleared out a swath of the monsters with his twin incineration, everyone could advance by a huge step every time. Noticing the opportunity that the two presented for them to break through the enemy's encirclement, the players immediately focused their support in the two's direction. Youthful Reflection was elated that everyone had located a possible point to break through, but before he could even express his happiness, he saw Goofy stop pushing forward and retreat among the players with an apple in his mouth. Youthful Reflection was now enraged. "What are you doing at this crucial point? Can't be helped, he's out of mana," said the archer Royal God Call. He was not a part of the team that had charged in and was currently hugging his bow near Youthful Reflection. Youthful Reflection felt like crying, but no tears would come out. Just this retreat of Goofy to replenish his mana was enough to affect the state of the entire battle itself. Chapter 282, leaving everyone breathless with his extraordinary fighting skill. Young Master Han, who was watching the fight before him, was incessantly shaking his head. Even Youthful Reflection could tell that Goofy's retreat to recuperate his mana was extremely troublesome, yet the man in question did not know of this. Actually, young Master Han did not put his hopes on Goofy from the start, since he knew that the latter had insufficient mana to get out of the monster's encirclement. They would probably have an easier time if it were players that encircled them, as Goofy's monstrous damage output could strike fear in their hearts. Unfortunately, the mountain bandits the system spawned were not programmed to feel fear when facing formidable players. Many people were currently feeling annoyed at Goofy. It was as if he had realized this himself as he suddenly returned to the front line with the apple still stuck in his mouth. Waving his moonlit nightfalls through the mountain bandits, he spat out the apple and recited the twin incineration's incantation. The flames that burst forth went around him again, causing everyone to be dumbfounded. Many of the gathered players gawked at the half-eaten apple of Goofy's. What sort of apple was that? How could it replenish his mana in just a short while? Many of them strongly resisted the urge to inspect the half-eaten apple that lay on the floor. When Goofy returned into the formation, Svelte Dancer immediately coordinated her attacks with him and took that chance to ask, "How did you recover your mana so soon?" "I'm also wondering about that myself." "How strange." Goofy's mana was continuously getting replenished even as he spoke. With his rudimentary gaming knowledge, he could not make sense of this and could only do his best to expend it. Flourishing his moonlit nightfalls, Goofy pointed toward the monster's side and chanted, "Electric wall, fall." The air instantly crackled with electricity amid the players' anxiety, yet nothing else happened. Goofy felt stunned. The air should form a wall of lightning, so why did nothing appear? Young Master Han also found Goofy's grand casting of a spell that did not cause anything to be rather strange. Knowing how well Goofy and Svelte Dancer worked together, he quickly sent him this message: "Use an AO spell to burn a path out for everyone." "Right." Gufei replied. The mono consumption for electric wall was on the high side, and he currently did not have enough for it. Nonetheless, his mana was still being replenished continuously. Gufei did not bother to dwell on this. Seeing that his mana bar was filled up once more, he lifted his sword and cast Blazing Tree of 1,000 Inferno. His casting time was still slow. Having chanted the incantation, the ground blazed into a firestorm that burned down a whole swath of mountain bandits. Young Master Han felt pissed, though. What did you use that for? Cast Descending Wheel of Flames, instead. Eh? Gufei was nonplussed for a bit before slapping his forehead at the sight in front of him. The blazing inferno raged for 5 seconds. Given his insta-kill mage moniker, not one player dared to step into the spell zone for fear of getting killed by it. In contrast, the mountain bandits fearlessly swarmed into the sea of flames and filled the space he had created in a jiffy. Gufei quickly learned from his mistake. Raising his hand, he unleashed Descending Wheel of Flames once he had enough mana. The players were finally able to capitalize on this chance of him clearing out another patch of mountain bandits, allowing them to tear through the enemy's encirclement. Did you still have mana? Continue. Young Master Han shouted to Gufei. It's like I have unlimited mana. Gufei was elated. Descending Wheel of Flames was still on cooldown, so Gufei opted to teleport himself into the mountain bandits' midst and slashed them with Twin Incineration, swiftly clearing another small circle. Svelte Dancer darted forward to aid Gufei at the first opportunity as the other players did their best to keep up with the two's pace. Alright, it's back. Gufei's sword slew several mountain bandits just as Descending Wheel of Flames cooldown ended, letting him cast it once more. Any attacks that could potentially interrupt his spell casting were dutifully blocked by Svelte Dancer. The newly formed flame wheel burned brightly as it dove straight down to the ground and cleared out another patch of mountain bandits. When the players saw this, they excitedly called out to Gufei as they defended him, "Forget about breaking through, let's just kill all of them." What a great idea! Gufei concurred to these players and flourished his sword with Twin Incineration to kill off a whole row of mountain bandits, evidently getting carried away in the process. It was then that he received a message. Opening the message box, he felt surprised to discover that it had been from Vast Lushness. Hey, it's best if you watch your mana consumption. My mana is about to run out. Gufei dazedly searched for Vast Lushness among the crowd and located her not too far from him. Vast Lushness had also charged in with the melee job classes, yet she had been pointing her holy staff to Gufei. When she saw Gufei looking at her, she smilingly asked, "Did you really think that you're being freely gifted mana from the gods?" Although Gufei was still clueless about it, he could still feel that Vast Lushness's presence and his constant mana replenishment had a direct correlation. Based on her words, his mana replenishment would not last forever. Hence, he immediately decided to stop squandering the gift. A saying went, "Good steel should be used for the blade." Although Gufei thoroughly enjoyed using Twin Incineration to slay foes, he knew that Descending Wheel of Flames was the better choice in the current situation. Reining in his impulse to directly cut people down, he waited for Descending Wheel of Flames cooldown to end before diligently bombarding the mountain bandits. "Charge, everyone!" Gufei pointed for everyone the direction to head over to, as if he were a commander directing his men. What he was truly worried about was meeting the accusing eyes of those who had just suggested to him to butcher all the mountain bandits. Reality proved that the players were not so obstinate. Seeing Gufei striving to break through the enemy's encirclement, they also followed suit and carved their way out accordingly. The players quickly filled the space Gufei had emptied by disposing of the throng of mountain bandits with his Descending Wheel of Flames. A breach in the encirclement soon appeared after Gufei dropped 2 more flame wheels. Vast Lushness's mana was already used up by this point, so Gufei's supply of mana subsequently halted. His remaining mana was enough to cast Descending Wheel of Flames twice from here on. All the encircled players were elated. As long as they got out of the encirclement, they would no longer have to fight the mountain bandits' attacks while being surrounded on all sides. These level 30 monsters would surely fall under their assault once they properly got in position by the rolling plains ahead. As everyone was fantasizing about this, the mountain bandits suddenly roared. Following their guttural roar, Sadho burst forth, leapt over the players' heads, and landed right before Gufei, effectively blocking the player's way out. The player's hearts thumped fast. Did Sato, who had been mainly commanding the mountain bandits thus far, finally decide to join the fight? Although mountain bandit leader Sato's underlings were merely at level 30, it would be fatal to assume that he would be of the same caliber. Sato could be considered as a quest-specific boss, a monster that would only appear if players obtained the relevant quest and killed their way through Oolong Cave. Without it, players would only find an empty hut deep in the recesses of Oolong Cave. Everyone was also aware that quest-specific bosses were far troublesome to deal with than wild bosses of the same level. When two commanders clashed, the underlings would usually stand by the side to cheer and show support accordingly. Sato's underlings, meanwhile, continued to attack the players even when he came forward. The players continued to fend off the mountain bandits, as they felt clueless on how to deal with Sato. They were heavily surrounded and were barely holding their own against the swarming monsters. None had a hand to spare to deal with the boss. Anyway, was a boss a being any random players could easily deal with? If even players who had made substantial preparations would still die when facing this sort of monsters, what more could be expected from these players that were currently in an unfavorable and chaotic predicament? As the players anxiously considered if they should disperse themselves, Gufei brought his sword before him and charged at the boss without missing a beat. "You're insane." Even's felt dancer was shocked by his action. No matter how indomitable she considered herself to be, she would never think that she had the ability to solo a boss. Therefore, she did not expect for Gufei to actually have the guts to solo a boss. "It's not like it's my first time facing him, I'm quite familiar with fighting him." Gufei smiled at her before sending a sword slash to Sato. Sato reacted exactly like how a boss would when facing such an attack. He sent out an attack of his own. Shrugging his shoulders capriciously, Sato moved to unleash his powerful attack, Red Blaze. Gufei vividly recalled his duel with mountain bandit leader Sato, and the latter's shoulder movement clued him in on the fact that Sato was about to unleash his special attack. Although he did not know how powerful Sato's special attack was, it had never once hit Gufei before. Moreover, Gufei was no longer a level 30 mage. He had been about even in terms of attack speed with Sato back then. Right now, he was faster than the boss Sato. Swiftly extending his hand, Gufei was able to send a slash to Sato before the latter could complete his ultimate move. Sato's ultimate move was unfortunately not a spell, so the verdict deemed Gufei's slash as insufficient to interrupt the attack. Thankfully, Gufei had fast reaction speed. As the huge saber glowing red lashed out, Gufei nimbly twisted his body and avoided the move completely. Following this, he heard someone scream from behind him. A random player got hit by that blow instead, dying right there and then. Actually, these players should have been able to withstand Sato's Red Blaze at their current level, yet that player had just been a little unlucky since he no longer had full HP after fighting in the front line for so long. Without any priest dedicated to healing the player, death was the only outcome for him after taking that move head on. "Take care, everyone," Gufei cautioned as he continued to engage Sato. He could only do this since he did not have a way to stop Sato from unleashing Red Blaze. Having judged that his mage character did not have the capacity to endure the boss's special attack, he could not possibly offer to block it with his body. The players could not help but be affected by the sight of the mad person duking it out with the boss Sato, causing everyone to lose their minds. Gufei was actually taking on Sato by himself without appearing to be at a disadvantage. This was only possible because he could avoid every attack of Sato. All the players could only gawk at the fantastical level of fighting skill that Gufei was currently demonstrating. Chapter 283, Utterly Despicable and Shameless. Sato came out to intervene just as the players were about to break out of the encirclement. But to everyone's surprise, Gufei turned out to be capable of dealing with Sato by himself. Still, it was evident that Gufei would be unable to quickly deal with boss Sato, as the latter was wearing full body armor this time around. Many players were currently spread out in a strip that went deep inside the mountain bandits' encirclement, and these people were unwilling to relinquish their current position to the enemies despite Sato blocking their path forward. Thankfully, there were quite a lot of players participating in this battle, and the absence of those players that went delving into the enemy's ranks created space for the players behind to fill in. With these players reinforcing the position and holding the line, The mages could now come forward and find a chance to unleash their spells. Previously, these mages were worrying about hitting their comrades who had been clashing with the mountain bandits by accident from their position behind the archers. "Why don't I give it a shot? Just get a few men to protect me as I cast my spell." Drifting, the publicly recognized #1 mage of Parallel World, confidently held his magic stave aloft. Drifting needed to be in the front line of this fight for him to kill off swathes of enemies just like Gufei. However, in such a chaotic fight and with everyone engaging the mountain bandits coming from every direction, the movement of monsters as well as the players could easily interrupt the mage's spell casting. Gufei could only cast Ascending Wheel of Flames boldly because he had the top player in the entire game, Svelte Dancer, protecting him. Besides, the fact that he could take on a boss by himself without being at a disadvantage attested to his extraordinary fight prowess. That, as youthful reflection mulled on how he could form a defensive line at Svelte Dancer's level for Drifting, Silver Moon suddenly raised his arm. "You three, defend him." The three guardians besides Silver Moon lifted their shields called Bulwark of Imprisonment and jogged toward Drifting. Drifting was astonished. "Guardians? Will these three be enough to defend me?" "Don't worry," Silver Moon assured Drifting, "they have exceptional defense." Drifting plunged right into the enemy's formation with the three guardians protecting him. Drifting kept hearing the sounds of attacks hitting the shields, yet the three men remained immovable like mountains, and he was unhampered in the least as he stayed within them. Descending Wheel of Flames. Descend. Drifting finally cast. None could tell who had a more monstrous spell damage between Parallel World's #1 mage and Gufei, since Drifting's Descending Wheel of Flames had the ability to obliterate every mountain bandit nearby as well. Drifting was like an accurate artillery. Having invested all his points into intelligence, he was able to dish out the highest spell damage possible each time. Moreover, Drifting's equipment was focused on increasing either his intelligence or his magic damage output. Even his top-grade magic staff could release power necessary to kill a lot of level 30 mountain bandits. His step-by-step approach in terms of equipment and spell usage let him maintain absolute power. In contrast, Gufei was entirely dependent on his two pieces of over-leveled equipment. While he possessed incredible might right now, it was only a matter of time before it faded in the face of advancement, be it in gear or skills. As the game progressed further, under the three guardians' impenetrable protection, Drifting could freely unleash his spells. This led to another string of players carving another path out of the blockade. While everyone was admiring Drifting's high spell damage, Drifting for his part was feeling awed by the three guardians' airtight defense. These men did not just have frighteningly high defense, they were extremely good at guarding him as well. The three completely adapted to his fighting tempo, not even bumping into Drifting once as they prevented any attacks from reaching him. No second boss appeared to block their path, so this string of players successfully broke through to Youthful Reflection's utter delight. With this path carved out successfully, the players that had been hindered by this mountain range's terrain were now able to head over to the open plains ahead. These players finally experienced the vastness of the plains outside the mountain pass. Everyone fanned out and basically encapsulated the mountain bandits in their encirclement this time. The sound of the ensuing slaughter reverberated in the air. The players had been impatiently watching the fight from afar and had been wishing to lend a hand, but they were blocked by the mountain's terrain. Their thirst for blood had since left them parched. Right now, each of them was bravely engaging the foes with ferocity comparable to the monsters before them. Dealing with the level 30 mountain bandits was already nothing more than child's play to these level 40 players. With the monsters' loss of their terrain advantage, nothing really needed to be said about the eventual result. For fear of the players becoming reckless and suffering unnecessary casualties, Youthful Reflection incessantly reminded them to be careful. The mountain bandits were very quickly disposed of, but the duel between Gufei and Sato appeared to be far from over. Sato's defense had significantly risen with him wearing clothes. Moonlit Nightfall's physical damage was superficial at best, so Gufei replaced it with Sacred Flames of Baptism after he had cast Twin Incineration twice. Gouts of flame continued to flare with his ring of subdued lightning proxing from time to time. The electricity that crackled at his blade's sharp edge with his every strike was visually stunning, especially since it was accompanied by the sound effect for thunder. While it was unknown how much damage it dealt, his strike would often cause Sato to spasm as if he were breakdancing. The players gawked at this, All of them wondered about the sort of weapon Gufei's Chinese broadsword was for it to cause such an effect. Besides Gufei's mage robe that was shown with question marks on its description window, they could tell that his other equipment, including the level 30 sacred flames of baptism, was all nothing out of the ordinary. The surrounding players, especially those that liked consistency and disdained anything that bore the term chance, had never considered equipment that increased the proc rate of his weapon's additional fire attack to be anything but trivial or impractical in combat. He's too damn up. Since his equipment was nothing short of average, they could only focus on Gufei's skillful swordplay. While his swordplay seemed simple with him mainly dodging Sato's attacks, the players could feel that this was not really the case. They did not know how to describe the scene unfolding before them and could only gawk at the two combatants. Should we lend a hand? Quite a few men asked, as everyone recalled that Gufei was actually fighting a boss. What sort of gamers would they be if they did not take this chance to steal the boss kill? Guttural bellows came from these players. Quickly assist him. They gave such a righteous reasoning even as they dove toward the boss with the intention of stealing it. Bosses represented a huge chunk of experience points, coin-filled pouches, and the possibility of gold or purple tier item drops. With such wondrous rewards, the players abandoned everything from their discipline to their teammates as they rushed toward Sato as if he were their father. Gufei was actually feeling aggrieved that no player offered to help him when the fighting ebbed. So he promptly felt comforted when many players surged toward him like flowing lava from a volcano that had erupted to provide assistance. With attacks coming from every direction, Sato could no longer devote his strikes to Gufei like before. Feeling quite bored, he gave Sato a slash or two before he retreated from the fight while wiping his brows with his sleeves. The eyeballs of countless players almost fell out of their sockets when they witnessed this. Many of them were feeling distressed at being unable to attack the boss due to cramped space available for fighting Sato. So Gufei's casual retreat from the front line as if this did not matter to him filled them with joy. It was fine if a player could not take advantage of this situation due to his inability to fight the boss, but Gufei was clearly capable of soloing Sato. To be able to give up the skill, they suddenly felt that this mage was incomparably noble and outstanding. The other members of Young Master's Elite made their way over and began lecturing Gufei for his action. They knew how different Gufei's thought process was compared to the average gamers. He was someone who simply did not care for boss drops or any potential gains, which explained his readiness to let the others take the kill from him. Gufei listened to their nagging as he ate a banana, saying once he finished, "Reward? Why worry about that? Anyway, I heard there's a rule where the item that a monster drops will go to the player that deals the most damage, isn't that right?" They were momentarily stunned by this statement. Brother Assist turned his gaze over to the skirmish. With many people attacking Sato, it seems it will truly be difficult for any of them to deal more damage than you did, but... Turning his gaze on Gufei once more, Brother Assist quickly added, "That's only if you are not in the same party. Everyone has already formed a party together, so that rule won't apply." About that, "I didn't join the party," Gufei admitted. "You didn't join the party?" Everyone was shocked. "Yeah, I declined the invitation since Silver Moon sent it," Gufei explained. They had joined the party purely to take advantage of Silver Moon's king's command. His skill could only affect players in the same party, and anyone who was not in the same party as him would be unable to enjoy its effects. When Silver Moon was forming the party for this operation, Gufei unhesitatingly rejected his invitation. Having understood the truth of the situation, the men of Young Master's Elite could not help but find the player's desperate attempt to deal damage at Sato rather comical. Only Brother Assist was still fretting, the person that lands the last attack will also gain priority. If it happens to be someone of the same party, it is still possible for the team priority to supersede yours. Guess it can't be helped. Then, who knows when the last hit will land? Gufei helplessly chirped. "Maybe it's now." Royal God Call answered jokingly. "Is that so?" Gufei played along with him. Pulling out Moonlit Night Falls, he pointed it toward the skirmish and chanted, "Thunderbolt, strike!" A streak of lightning arced down from the heavens and into the crowd of players, striking Sato squarely on his head. The hair upon Sato's head got fried to crisp, and a puff of wispy smoke lingered on him as he convulsed for the last time in today's fight. All, including Gufei, were dumbfounded and their mouths hung agape. "That's really fortunate of me," he muttered to himself. "Well, the drops will surely belong to you now, no two ways about it," the others said. "Can't be helped." Then, Gufei sighed as he squeezed his way into the crowd, asking, "What dropped?" These players who had wasted their time beating Sato up glared at the mage contemptuously. "We've been had. This guy is utterly despicable and shameless." Chapter 284, The Mountain Bandit Leader's Item Drops. Amid the surrounding players fuming at what had just happened, Gufei uncaringly rushed forward to pick up the monster loots as he kept on shouting, excuse me, please." And yet, all the players remained in their position as they stared fixedly at the circle within. While the boss's underlings were at level 30, Sato himself was beyond that level. Why else would they be struggling to complete the Seizing the Mountain Bandit Leader Sato quest when they were at level 30 if Sato were a level 30 boss? Following this logic, Sato's drops should also be on par with his current level. Sato had dropped a money pouch and 2 pieces of equipment on the ground upon his death, yet the players could only stare longingly at those items since the system was preventing them from picking the loots up. As such, they were possibly experiencing the most excruciating pain any gamer could ever feel. "Hey, can you two help me?" Gufei asked Toothless Sword and Youthful Reflection, the people in charge of the expedition, for help. While the two looked serious on the surface, they were actually celebrating Gufei's misfortune inside. Still, they could no longer feign ignorance about Gufei's plight since he was directly asking them for help. Youthful Reflection showed him a troubled look. "That is, as you can see, it's a little difficult to talk them off." Youthful Reflection was actually stalling for time. The system would only prevent items from being picked up by others for a short period of time. Once this time lapsed, anyone could pick the items up. Expecting people to hand over the drops to their owner was just pipe dream in a MMO. Gufei was a straightforward person, though. Upon hearing Youthful Reflection's evasive response, he merely shook his head with a sigh. "Guess it can't be helped." The two felt delighted when they heard this. This was when a thought flashed through Youthful Reflection's mind. This guy can't possibly be thinking of killing all these people, right? Although they were comrades, that was just for this expedition. In fact, he was holding himself back from moving against Gufei, whom he considered to be capable of killing others without batting an eye. He would not even be surprised if Gufei really did kill the bunch of people before them. Just as he was about to say something, Youthful Reflection saw Gufei leap vertically from his current position while pointing toward the crowd. Translocation. Blank. Gufei disappeared. Meanwhile, a bunch of players began to excitedly jostle with one another once they heard that the item's owner was barricaded from penetrating their ranks. All of them salivated at Sato's corpse as they looked forward to snatching the boss's item drops. Online games were probably the only places where it was acceptable for people to salivate over a grotesque corpse. As these men eagerly counted down the seconds that they would be prevented from getting near the item drops and prepared themselves for the fight that was about to occur for the items, a figure blurred into existence before their eyes and instantly stepped onto Sato's corpse triumphantly. Many lost their composure in their shock, yet Gufei remained uncaring of all this. Laughing at everyone around him, he asked, "What are you guys looking at?" Gufei then picked up the coin pouch and 2 pieces of equipment beside Sato's corpse under the crowd's agonized gazes. Sometimes, an in-game item would promptly drop once a monster was defeated. At other times, it would remain inside the monster's clothes for a player to search himself or herself. The boss's corpses would thus often meet quite the terrible fate of being undressed, flipped around, and closely inspected, turning every boss player's defeated into a highly X-rated scene. The players actually wished they could just rip the bodies apart in search of the loot, but the game designs regretfully did not allow such level of gore. Gufei was fortunately not that extreme. Checking Sato's pockets, he quickly got up after. He did not intend to conduct a thorough search of Sato's corpse under the crowd's intense scrutiny. He felt the players would end up drowning him in their displeasure if he were to unceremoniously strip the boss down until nothing was left for even the vultures to scrape at. "Please let me through." Gufei's smile was still fixed on his face. The players had no interest in blocking his path this time around. Listlessly clearing a path for him, Gufei humbly made his way through the crowd. Halfway out, The system-designated time limit for looting Sato's corpse expired and it instantly suffered inhumane treatment from the surrounding players. By the time the crowd scattered, the once fearsome mountain bandit leader Sato had been left sprawling on the ground dressed only in his undergarments with his face on the ground. Suffering such a fate, it was as if the corpse could not wait for the system's white light to collect it. What dropped? Many familiar faces immediately asked Gufei once he returned to his mercenary group. Gufei tossed the coin pouch to Royal God Call, saying, "Count the content." He then took out the 2 pieces of equipment he had looted from the boss. Bandit Leader's Ring, Purple Tier, plus 12 Strength plus 12 Agility. From its name alone, the item could be said to not be meant for mages. Royal God Call, Svelte Dancer, Sword Demon and even War Without Wounds salivated over this item. Yet Gufei excitedly replaced the Ring of Flames, which increased additional fire attack proc rate by 7%, for it. He then dangled Ring of Flames to the crowd. "Anyone interested in this?" When no one said a word, Gufei took out a similar looking ring and raised both to them. "Dare a pair? Go to hell." Everyone berated. The other item he got was not equipment but a permanent skill scroll. Since Mountain Bandit leader Sato was the one that dropped it, it was obviously a thief-related skill. Gufei regretfully showed it to everyone. Shadow Walk Effect puts the user in an uninterruptible stealth state that consumes 7% mana every second. Skill cooldown, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Job class requirement, Rogue. This. All were in a daze when they saw it. "Any rogue around here?" Gufei cried out, already looking for a buyer. "Give it to me." Svelte Dancer pounced on Gufei. Gufei sidestepped her pouncing figure and lifted the scroll up to her. "Cancel my debt to you in exchange for this scroll, then." Ahem! Brother Assist cleared his throat audibly, but Svelte Dancer unhesitatingly took the skill scroll from Gufei's hand as she rolled her eyes. "Oh, stop with that. I know this Shadow Walk skill is more valuable than the Blink skill I've given him." Brother Assist felt slightly embarrassed. He had cleared his throat to signal Gufei that he had sent him a message, but it turned out that Svelte Dancer was sincere about the transaction as she did not even attempt to rip Gufei off. The scroll disappeared from Svelte Dancer's hand once she got a hold of it. She then fished out 2 coin pouches from her dimensional pocket, counted the amount inside, and tossed them over to Gufei. "Here are 1,500 gold coins." Adding the 1,500 gold coins you still owe me, I've essentially bought this skill scroll for 3,000 gold coins. "You won't be making a loss at this rate, yeah?" She was not looking at Gufei when she said this, though, instead, her gaze was on Brother Assist. Brother Assist once more felt sheepish inside and bowed his head in embarrassment. "I guess so," Gufei offhandedly replied as he dropped the coin pouches into his dimensional pocket. "Guess so. This lady here has actually bought the skill scroll for such a high price, yet that's how you view it?" Svelte Dancer indignantly yelled and she made it seem as if she would pounce on him once more. "High price? I mean you paid for it rather generously." Gufei quickly rephrased his statement, not wanting to quarrel with her over it. No one was exactly capable of telling the skill's true worth, yet even he could judge that it was highly valuable. Stealth could be considered as the weakest thief skill. Stealth could easily be interrupted with the slightest touch, but with Shadow Walk that seemed capable of raising the skill's level to near invincibility, stealth would not be interrupted even if a thief was under attack or attacking. Royal God Call and War Without Wounds were green with envy at the sight of Gufei pocketing the gold coins and sourly commented, "To think you would accept money from a babe." "Scum. That's right, you beast." The second man chimed in. "Shall we split the gold coins, then?" Gufei asked. The two immediately became elated. "That's a great idea." "Scram! You two are the real scum and beast," Gufei countered. The brigade's trek through the Oolong mountain range was not yet over. Building bridges on the mountain path as well as overcoming that large-scale surprise attack, Gufei had truly made substantial contributions in this portion of the mission. While drifting was the one that had managed to penetrate the mountain bandits' blockade, Gufei's effort of soloing Sato was undeniably what had allowed drifting to escape the fate of being diced into pieces by the mountain bandit leader. The players were of course aware of this, But Gufei's act of pocketing almost all of Sato's dropped items made all their feelings of gratitude toward him disappear altogether. Each of them was even fervently praying that he would meet a tragic end. As they exited the mountain pass and stepped onto the rolling plains ahead, the large group of players could vaguely make out the outline of Y City in the horizon. Everyone sighed in relief. This expedition's first part was finally over. As for what sort of benefit they gained from this, all the players could only send another round of curses toward Gufei. Y City. Emotions welled up within Gufei, yet Jun's reign was actually more excited than him. Having stayed longer in Y City than Gufei, she was more familiar with this region's customs and terrain than him. Spotting a few players ahead, Jun's reign immediately covered her face with a piece of cloth from her dimensional pocket. Ziu, what are you doing? A lady asked her out of curiosity. Everyone around here does this, Jun's reign replied generally. The others were still puzzled by her answer, so they requested for her to explain further. Yet Jun's reign was unable to give a clear reason for this action and could only say that this was what the locals did. Gufei remembered the last time he had been here. Indeed, men wearing face covers had attempted to rob him, yet saying that everyone did this would be a little far-fetched. Everyone could still not make sense of this and merely continued forward. Soon, they entered the grinding map before them. Looking around, they saw that all the players in the area were indeed covering their faces just like Jun's reign. Just what is going on? Everyone found this comical. When the masked players saw the large group of men appear from somewhere, they all stopped what they were doing. Several of them even began retreating while others anxiously whispered to one another. What's happening? Why are there suddenly so many people here? Fuck, does that trash have such a strong backer? We're in deep shit now. To mobilize such a behemoth army, is that kid someone from the 10 Guild Alliance? I don't remember seeing that kid wear an emblem or anything. Fuck, did he act weak to make us lose our guard? We're dead meat. But these guys don't seem to be wearing the 10 Guild Alliance's emblem, either. Motherfucker, who else could muster such a huge army besides the 10 Guild Alliance? Let's just make ourselves scarce. In a short while, plenty of players vanished from the grinding map. Seeing the plains before them suddenly become empty, the players from Yunjuan City were immediately taken aback. This was in stark contrast with the fevered competition going on in many of Yunjuan City's grinding maps. Each of them was simply dumbfounded by this. Finally, Traversing 4C's 3 core members spoke up, "Gentlemen, it's getting pretty late. Let's not tarry here and quickly enter the city." For the mercenaries, please remember to record your character data over by Y City. As for the remuneration for this quest's portion, we'll discuss it first thing tomorrow morning. Oathless Big Bro. A mercenary spoke up, "Just what sort of item are you guys escorting for this quest?" After traveling so far, I've yet to spot any item that fits the criterion of being the object escorted by us. Chapter 285, When in Rome. All these mercenaries were knowledgeable when it came to quests and missions. They knew that an escort mission would usually have an item that could not fit into a player's dimensional pocket, requiring the players to manually carry, bear, or lift it to the destination. The point was that it had to be carried openly. So far, not one of them had seen an item that fit this criterion among the Traversing 4C's players. Nevertheless, this quest's validity could not be denied. The mountain bandits and robbers ambushed near Oolong Cave, the system formed crevasses on the mountain path, and Boss Sato's appearance near the end of the Oolong mountain range. These situations that players would usually not bump into were clearly triggered by Traversing 4C's guild quest. After reaching their first stopover, someone could no longer hold in his curiosity and voiced it out. He believed that his question was sound, yet the players around were unexpectedly gazing at him rather peculiarly. The man felt aggrieved, although his comrades often called him an idiot. He considered his question to be quite clever, and he could not fathom what was wrong with it no matter how hard he thought. Amid this man's puzzlement, Oathless Sword laughingly told him, "Man, your mercenary leader must not have joined the meeting this morning, or perhaps he forgot to inform you." "Mercenary leader?" the man asked, confused. The term sounded foreign to his ears, and it took him quite a while to register its meaning. He turned his gaze over to Sakurazaka Muni, their so-called mercenary leader. Unfortunately for the man, Sakurazaka Muni was entirely occupied with sticking as close as possible to vast lushness to carry even a whit about his predicament. No one bothered to supply him with information about the matter either, with everyone merely continuing toward Y City. The players from Yunjuan City that had never been to this region before soon became well acquainted with Y City's local customs. In the short distance that they had traveled toward the city, they witnessed 5 separate group PvPs and 17 duels. These excluded the fights happening further away for them to assess. This local custom that was steeped in unbridled aggression left the players from Yunjuan City tongue-tied. They were now even starting to understand why many players in this region were keeping their faces covered. Just from the 22 fights that they had witnessed along the way, 7 occurred despite the players' faces being covered. They even heard some of those involved shout, "Even if you turned gray and old, I'd still recognize you," before clashing with one another. Funnily enough, there were instances when the pieces of cloth that these combatants were using to cover their faces would fall off during the fight, which would then cause all the combatants to freeze up. Cursing at one another, they would then demand, "Who the fuck are you?" Instead of reaching a peaceful resolution, the combatants would just cover their faces once more before continuing their fights. It was as though even when their old animosity remained unfinished, new adversaries were made. Every Y City player persisted in PvPing until the very end. Those hailing from Yunjuan City were experienced gamers themselves, and they watched these fights with awe and wonder. As for those hailing from Y City, when they saw the large throng of players walking by, they would immediately give them a wide berth, opting to warily observe the procession from afar. Meanwhile, the people part of the expedition were currently discussing about what they had just witnessed on their respective channels. Those who had been to Y City before, like Gufei and the rest of Young Master's elite, were discussing how the local customs had evolved since their last visit to the region. Willow, June's reign, and those that had actually stayed in the city for a long while were feeling nostalgia over their return to familiar grounds. Finally, Silver Moon, Vast Lushness, and those who had quite the history in Y City performed different actions. Silver Moon somehow acquired himself a piece of cloth to cover his face, while Vast Lushness, who was originally part of Silver Moon's former Past Deeds Guild, merely continued to walk toward the city with her face exposed. The players in the expedition soon found themselves standing right before one of Y City's gates. Oathless Sword stepped forward and addressed everyone for the last time today. "This will do for tonight. Please arrive at 7 o'clock sharp tomorrow night right on this spot. I believe none of you will have problems with that." The players gave an affirmative answer and dispersed into the city after. While traversing 4 seas chose to start the guild quest's journey daily in accordance with the same primetime period that the game officials had used for the just-ended PvP tournaments, this was not the only time many of these players played the game. Besides Gufei, the others in Young Master's Elite pretty much lived their lives inside Parallel World. Arriving at Y City, plenty of these players would continue to play the game even with the mission temporarily on hold. But seeing that Y City was not a peaceful region, these players did not immediately engage themselves in activities like what they would do if they were in Yunjuan City. Even the 5 experts of Young Master's Elite seriously discussed where they would grind on monsters or do quests. "Miles, what about you?" the 5 men asked Gufei on the mercenary channel. "I'm logging off," Gufei replied. The 5 were already expecting his response, so they did not speak further about the matter. Most of the players playing Parallel World would log off at a set time like Gufei, but the expedition members happened to be made up of those that would grind their levels whenever they had time. Within this 1,000-man army, those that had a fixed log-off time were in the minority. Gufei and the mini Amethyst Rebirth ladies belonged to this group. While the others were busy asking around for the nearest log-off point, Gufei and the ladies had the privilege of being guided by June's Reign and Willow to a safe zone. June's Reign happily took this role of guiding the foreigners to a spawn point. Willow, for her part, was more reserved despite actually being a past resident of Y City. Her gaze was locked toward a direction as she silently took out a dagger from her dimensional pocket and activated stealth. Someone lightly patted her shoulder as she took a step forward, canceling her stealth as a corollary. Willow irately turned to look behind her. It was Gufei. "What are you trying to do?" Gufei asked with a smile. Willow used her eyes to do the talking. Gufei followed her gaze that landed on Vast Lushness, who was blankly standing by the side of the street. My friends in Y City told me that Silver Moon and Vast Lushness have disappeared here. I didn't expect for them to turn up in Yunjuan City. Willow spat with vitriol, adding, I should have thought of this. Since Silver Moon turned up in Yunjuan City, why wouldn't she be there, too? Silver Moon's name had spread in Yunjuan City after his performance in the mercenary PvP tournament, yet Willow only had discord with Vast Lushness, so Willow only cared about her. Although Vast Lushness had maintained a low profile in Yunjuan City, she had come into contact with the Amethyst Rebirth ladies before. Why did Willow not know this, though? Puzzled, Gufei asked her about it. This caused Willow to express her shock. When was this? It's when we grinded levels together. On the second day. Gufei reminded her. That day, huh? Willow recalled before jolting to attention. I was sick that day. In fact, I didn't log on for several days. Oh. Gufei also remembered. Willow had indeed been feeling sick to the point of falling down with the slightest tap when she had gone to log off prior to that fateful day. That explains why you didn't know. Gufei gave Willow an overview of Vast Lushness and Silver Moon's situation that had led to their arrival to Yunjuan City. Willow was truly clueless as to what had transpired that day. Silver Moon and Vast Lushness's matter had been discussed by the ladies for several days after, yet Willow had coincidentally been offline on those days. When she got online, the matter was no longer a hot topic for the ladies to discuss. Thus, Willow remained in the dark about the whole matter and only learned of Silver Moon's arrival to Yunjuan City when his mercenary group garnered the public's attention. Today was also the first time she had seen Vast Lushness. Willow had actually been pondering on how to go about dealing with Vast Lushness during their entire trip to Y City. Hearing Gufei's recount of Vast Lushness and Silver Moon's story, Willow felt rather sympathetic toward Vast Lushness. She now found Silver Moon to be extremely detestable, especially since Gufei had vast knowledge of his bad deeds that were unknown to the ladies. Still, the fact that she had enmity with Vast Lushness remained true. It was simply not easy to let go of such a deep grudge after clashing verbally and physically many times before. Willow gripped her dagger tightly, unable to make a decision. Actually, taking her down now may not be as easy as you think. Did you see the guy next to her? Gufei asked. Yes. Willow's voice was dripping with contempt. There was no way she would miss Sakura Sakamuni bouncing up and down beside Vast Lushness during their journey to Y City. Although that guy looks and acts deplorable, he's actually a skilled gamer, Gufei said, adding, those guys with him are also veteran gamers. What a reprehensible lot. HMPH. Birds of the same feather really flock together. Willow had an utterly repulsive impression of Vast Lushness's character, so it was not surprising for her to fling all sorts of insults regarding the latter. Just as she finished criticizing the men with Vast Lushness, someone from the lewd bunch happened to look over and called out, "Drunk bro." Willow curiously eyed Gufei, who was currently feeling very embarrassed. Was he included in this flock of birds? Then, the atmosphere between them suddenly turned awkward and uncertain. This was when Sakura Sakamuni bounded toward them, with Fireball and the others flanking his sides. Waggling their eyebrows, they silently expressed their admiration for Gufei's ability to easily find a babe to accompany him wherever he went. Drunk bro, what plans do you have for tonight? Fireball asked. I'm about to log off, Gufei answered. Logging off now? Everyone was shocked. Does maintaining similar gaming schedule help earn these ladies' affection? These lewd men began analyzing Gufei's pickup techniques in great detail. Gufei did not know that these deplorable men were currently discussing about him on their mercenary channel as he limited their inability to perceive the tension pervading the air due to their presence. Willow was still holding her dagger tightly as she hatefully glared at Vast Lushness. Vast Lushness silently looked at Gufei and Willow. Sparks flew when the two ladies' eyes met. Yet the lewd men remained oblivious to all this as they discussed the various pickup techniques they knew of. This entire scene was astounding in itself. Have fun playing, then, we're gonna log off first. Gufei moved to drag Willow with him. Willow sighed and did not resist his pull. Just from Gufei forcibly canceling her stealth and telling her of Vast Lushness and Silver Moon's issue, she could tell that he had been trying to dissuade her from acting. Whether she accepted his explanation or not, She had no wish to reject his thoughtfulness and could only reluctantly give up her attempt to take Vastlushness's life. Next time, then, Willow thought to herself as she departed with Gufei. Chapter 286, No End to Hatred. Although he had departed with a temporarily appeased Willow, Gufei did not forget about the men he had left behind and sent Sakurazaka this message: "You know that you guys are in danger, right?" "What? Why?" Sakurazaka asked, puzzled. "Vastlushness. She has plenty of enemies here in Y City," Gufei explained. "That's great, then I'll protect her." Sakurazaka was clearly excited, treating this as a chance for him to perform favorably before her. "It's way more than what you imagined." Gufei was tempted to leave Sakurazaka to his devices right now. "How many are we talking about here exactly?" Sakurazaka finally perceived Gufei's serious tone. "About the same amount of people playing in Yunjuan City in the open beta days." Gufei gave him a conservative estimate. It was in Parallel Worlds open beta that past deeds had terrorized Y City with its tyrannical ways, so those who had joined after its official release could not possibly have bad blood with her. Gufei did not get a reply this time, only hearing a cry in the distance. "Hey, Mooney. What's the matter with you?" "Take care, then." He sent Sakurazaka this final message before logging off from the spawn point with Willow. Sakurazaka band of brothers shouted at him for a while before he finally returned to his senses. His eyes that gazed at Vastlushness were now filled with worship. To actually offend an entire city of players just like that! If not a legend, what else would she be? Vastlushness was also looking at Sakurazaka and company with a smile on her lips. "Have fun playing, I'll be logging off first." Sakurazaka felt stunned. Despite Vastlushness being a woman, she was a MMO addict, just like the rest of them, that would play Parallel World until the wee hours daily. And yet, she was saying that she would log off early tonight. Sakurazaka might be a reprehensible man, but he was no moron. He could guess the meaning behind her action. Framing her gesture in a favorable light, he felt completely touched. Sakurazaka wanted to hug her right there and then, yet he did not have the guts to do so. "I'm off." Vastlushness waved goodbye to the Forever in Flowers men before turning to make her way toward a log-off point alone. Sakurazaka dazedly gazed at her departing figure for quite a while. Waking up from his reverie, he hurriedly chased after her. "I'll walk you over." "No need." Vastlushness dissuaded. "No, I insist." "What if along the way?" Sakurazaka did not finish her words, but he knew that Vastlushness got his meaning. Vastlushness did not comment on this, nor did she reject his offer. Showing their backs to Fireball and the gang, they quietly departed from the location. "Putting your lady upon a pedestal, Mooney. You're the one I model my life after." These guys sighed in adulation. "God damn it. Why is the sleazy Mooney able to get himself a girl, while not one woman out there notices my charming self?" Some of them questioned the empty space, feeling disgruntled. "We got to work hard, then. It's rare for us to find ourselves somewhere new." "Time to lay the groundwork." "Lay, my ass." Practically all the players are covering their faces here. We can't even tell if the women are real babes. Ah, that's a serious problem, indeed. This group of men suddenly felt oppressed. "Actually, we'll only stay here for a day, so let's not be too serious about this and just enjoy ourselves," someone suggested. "That makes total sense," the others agreed. Viable targets spotted ahead. One of them suddenly announced as he lifted his hand to point forward. In front, 3 women with faces covered were gracefully walking down the street. All of them turned their gaze over and began to critique. "Since we can't see their faces, let's focus on their 3 sizes, instead. These 3 ain't bad. So what are we waiting for? Let's go." These men thus began their hunting and teasing activities. Gufei went online earlier than usual the next day. It was not every day that he got to visit Y City, so he did not wish to waste time. In a city where PvP was the norm, he was already expecting for the bounty assignment hall to be filled with people. What made this place more beautiful was that despite the players' equipment being average at best, their PvP standard was definitely top-notch. Gufei was just about to joyfully make his way over to the bounty assignment hall when he received a bombardment of messages. Gufei pulled out his inbox and saw that the culprit turned out to be Fireball. "Drunk bro, save me." Fireball's steady stream of terse messages clued Goofy in about the urgency of his friend's situation. Actually, Goofy already had a hunch that something like this might happen. "What's the matter? Are you being hunted? How did you know that?" Fireball asked, surprised. Time and time again, Goofy had challenged his cognition of things. "Didn't I already tell Mooney for you guys to be more vigilant here?" Goofy asked. Instead, Fireball, who was currently being hunted, naturally knew of the whole story behind his situation and could only tearfully say, "The two have actually gone to log off last night, yet they were blocked by people along the way." Sakurazaka Mooney had accompanied Vastlushness to the spawn point to log off last night, yet Vastlushness's notoriety turned out to be pretty severe and people were already onto her. Seeing that she was about to reach a spawn point, the local players gathered their comrades to block the spawn point and prevent her from logging off. It had been quite some time since Vastlushness left Y City, so their hatred for her should not have been as severe as before. However, Dusky Cloud's recent visit to Yunjuan City to participate in Goofy's meet and greet had ended in a disastrous note with him encountering and getting killed by Silver Moon's trap for Young Master's elite. Dusky Cloud was considered the overlord in Y City. It had been a long time since he suffered such a loss and it only served to rekindle his bad blood with the pair. At the time, he had to put his revenge on hold since the PvP tournaments were underway. Now that Parallel Worlds PvP events had ended, this issue once more resurfaced as one of the important matters for them to deal with. Silver Moon could no longer survive in Y City, so he had to leave for Yunjuan City and begin anew. Meanwhile, Dusky Cloud's friend in Yunjuan City, No Smile, and a few others traveled over to Y City to attach themselves to him after encountering heavy setbacks in Yunjuan City. If Dusky Cloud previously had informants in Yunjuan City, he no longer had that anymore. Therefore, he was absolutely clueless about Silver Moon's progress with his mercenary group. But from the ambush that day, it was apparent that Silver Moon had quite a few men at his disposal. This caused Dusky Cloud to be uncertain on how many men he should mobilize to take down Silver Moon. He was afraid that they would be unable to get the job done if he mistakenly sent insufficient men or that they would create misunderstandings with Yunjuan City's players if he sent too many men. Silver Moon was a devious person that could rouse external forces to his cause, so Dusky Cloud could not afford to be careless regarding him. When he finally sent several men to gather intel, they actually returned to Y City halfway. They stated that parts of the road leading toward Yunjuan City were eroded, making crossing them impossible. Only the system was capable of making major changes in Parallel Worlds terrain, so Dusky Cloud could only shelve his plan to deal with Silver Moon for now. His time had been occupied with researching the guild quest reward for placing first in the guild versus guild tournament these past few days, so they only started their hunt for Vastlushness when someone claimed to have spotted her in Y City. By the time Goofy got online, Sakurazaka Mooney, Vastlushness, Fireball, and friends had been on the run for an entire day and night. Fortunately, Vastlushness had plenty of experience evading pursuers in Y City, so she was well versed in using the winding back streets to lose their hunters. They also managed to drag things out until now with the use of the expert trappers in Sakurazaka Mooney's mercenary group. Unfortunately, their pursuers had the foresight to block off all the spawn points in Y City's gates, preventing them from logging off or leaving the city. Their pursuers even went as far as to request all the players passing through to remove the pieces of cloth covering their faces for inspection. No one dared to oppose their request since the men were from the 10 Guild Alliance. Vastlushness was not someone whom the people in Y City were very fond of at any rate, so many of the players were more than happy to comply with the men's request after hearing the reason behind it. "We'll forcefully log off if this continues, I'm pooped." Fireball sent Goofy this message. "Where are you now?" Goofy asked. Fireball told him his coordinates. "Drunk bro, it's up to you now to carve out an escape for us." Hee hee. Goofy merely chuckled as he readied his equipment. Adopting the local customs, Goofy took out a piece of cloth and covered his face. He then ran toward the coordinates Fireball had given him. "Hit me up if your location changes," Goofy messaged Fireball. Fireball did not reply, as he and company were once more engaging the enemies in a fight. The Great Hunting Mercenary Group was merely made up of the Forever in Flowers Guild's players, Just like how 4C's mercenary group was purely made up of the traversing 4C's guild's players, and was only at level 2 with 40 members. All of them had joined this mission, yet they were now down to just 18 men. The other 22 were killed off and sent back to a spawn point, so they naturally logged off and went to sleep. Quickly run. Vast Lushness led the way after the others finished setting up their traps. Sakura Zakamuni glanced over to his remaining men and spotted Fireball. How curious. We've already lost 22 men, yet you're still with us. Escape would not be difficult if there were just Sakura Zakamuni and his hunters. Since Fireball and Vast Lushness were with them, they could only stall for time using their traps. Sakura Zakamuni and his men heard their enemies' exclamations as they stepped onto their traps. Sakura Zakamuni realized how easy it was to trap their pursuers due to the popularity of confrontational approach in Y City, which resulted into the locals disdaining this sort of passive attacking method. Few people train the hunting trap skill in Y City, so their pursuers barely had any contact with it during PvP, with some not even seeing the skill in action at all. Sakura Zakamuni was baffled when the moronic white leaf plumage had actually placed his trap onto sandstone once, yet someone had still managed to step on it. Oh, no! Vast Lushness cried out, saying, "Where's the rest of the road?" She bewilderedly looked around her, realizing that she had brought everyone toward a dead end. This alley is supposed to have an exit. Did it change, or did I remember it wrongly? Vast Lushness had been away from Y City for so long that her confidence in her navigating skills in it wavered. Damn it. Guess we gotta fight to the death, then. Sakura Zakamuni resolutely led his men to retrace their steps as there were traps ahead. Since their enemies were chasing them from two different directions, they were officially out of options. Drunk bro, we're current at 30. We're trapped. Fireball anxiously sent Gufei this message. What a coincidence. I happened to pass by that spot. Gufei replied. Chapter 287, The Convulsing Guardian. Fireball hurriedly looked around for Gufei's figure, but he did not spot him at all. Instead, he saw their enemies appear from two different directions of the junctions, meeting at this alley's entryway. Agonized groans could be heard from his comrades. We're surrounded again. The man next to Fireball cursed out loud. Ugh! Stop your moaning, it's not like you're a woman. Hearing a grown man cry out like that is just plain gross. Enough prattling. Fire! Sakura Zakamuni ordered aloud. Seeing that they could no longer escape, they decided to drag down as many enemies as they could into their graves. A salvo of archers' arrows in an enclosed alley was extremely deadly, as they were nearly impossible to dodge in the cramped space. Two enemy players by the alley entrance were shot several times by the first wave of arrows, so they died very quickly. Y City's players were made tougher by their constant PvPing, though, and despite suffering Sakura Zakamuni and company's traps and arrow attacks, they remained unfazed. Several enemy guardians held shields before them and came to the forefront as their teammates began to huddle behind the shields. Advance! A voice commanded, and the enemies pushed forward while remaining hidden behind the shields. Sakura Zakamuni and company's volley of arrows caused plenty of enemies to be engulfed in white lights. Unfortunately, those white lights were not the result of the enemies dying but rather the enemy priests tirelessly bestowing heal on their comrades. Fireball, what are you doing? Sakura Zakamuni demanded. Most guardians possessed high physical defense and low magic defense, so while the archers' attacks could only deal minimal damage to them, the mage's spells could deal substantial damage to them. Fireball was the only mage in Sakura Zakamuni's team right now, yet he was actually looking around them instead of attacking the enemies accordingly. What can I do by myself, anyway? Fireball grimaced. He cast Burning Tree of 1,000 Inferno on the enemies, and just as he had thought, the damage dealt by his spell was hardly significant. The enemy priests merely continued bestowing heal through the damage as they advanced toward them. Concentrate your firepower on the person at the leftmost side. Sakura Zakamuni commanded his men with a wave of his hand. Actually, firing a steady stream of arrows to these enemies was futile. The enemies had already squeezed themselves into this dead-end alley, and the guardians were only tanking their attacks so as to reduce their casualties. Sakura Zakamuni and gang would probably be annihilated even if their enemies rushed toward them butt naked. Forget it. Death it is, Then, I'm so exhausted that death now means being able to log off and get some sleep to me. One of Sakura Zakamuni's teammates yawned, lazily firing off another arrow. Useless. Sakura Zakamuni eyed the person with disdain. Fireball tossed 2 more spells, yet they were as good as nothing. Seeing the enemies closing in on them, he could only sigh to the heavens. Drunk bro, didn't you say you were nearby? Where the heck are you? Over here. Gufei's voice came from above, followed by a streak of lightning that weaved itself into an electric web, which entangled the Guardians' shields protecting the 10 Guild Alliance's men that were gleefully rushing forward. A thunderous sound followed. The row of Guardians sizzled like raw steak on a teppanyaki grill, and smoke visibly rose from within their armor while they were relentlessly getting electrocuted. The sight of the Guardians wreathing in blue and yellow bolts of electricity until their lips quivered and convulsed frightened those following behind them. Someone attempted to pull the affected players out. Yet another player with common sense swatted his hand away, saying, "Don't. It's electricity. What do we do now? We need to use an insulator." Being a thief and all, the man was able to pull out an item that every thief had, a wooden baton for executing the bludgeon skill. This person then found purchase in the shield arm of the Guardian before him. The man looked over, his lips violently quivering the words, fuck off. What's going on? Everyone was at a loss. They were afraid of getting electrocuted as well if they pulled the people off the web of electricity with their hands, yet they also knew that using an insulated wooden baton could not save the Guardians at all. This was the hardship that came along with researching unknown skills and spells. There's a time limit for every spell, so perhaps we can wait this one out. Someone suggested. The whole row of twitching Guardians looked backward in unison and cursed the man through trembling lips. Motherfucker. Where did this spell come from, anyway? Someone proposed looking for the spellcaster to punish the mage accordingly. Everyone looked around, with some gazing upward. Those that looked up spotted Gufei on a rooftop, wielding a purple sword, with a piece of cloth tied over his face, wearing a black mage robe. Why does this person's get-up and demeanor seem awfully familiar? Some of those who had participated in the guild war back then between Past Deeds Eradication Army and Past Deeds Guild could not help but have this thought. As they were feeling uncertain, one of them suddenly felt heat rise from beneath his feet. Is it Burning Tree of 1,000 Inferno again? Priests. It was indeed Burning Tree of 1,000 Inferno. However, this time, Fireball was not the one that had cast it but Gufei. The man who had called for a priest died the moment the flames rose. The part of the alley where the 10 Guild Alliance's players were occupying suddenly turned into a burning hive that rapidly took their lives even as it grew in intensity in the spaces vacated by the insta-killed players. Ah! Someone screamed. Although this Burning Tree of 1,000 Inferno did not eliminate players the way Descending Wheel of Flames had outside the Mage Academy of Y City back then, quite a lot of the present players were reminded of that memorable scene. Y City was filled with skilled PvPers, yet none of them had seen another mage that could insta-kill players ever since that event back then as they grinded their way from level 30 to 40, leaving a deep impression on everyone. Fireball took this chaotic moment to literally fan the flames by casting his Blazing Tree of 1,000 Inferno right before Gufei's spell duration ended. Although the difference in the two's magic attack power was like day and night, those players that were on the brink of death after surviving Gufei's spell were still eliminated by Fireball's spell. Retreat. Someone hollered. Burning Tree of 1,000 Inferno was still burning, and the danger it posed was something that these men could not ignore. These men retreated, leaving behind the row of Guardians that was still convulsing inside the electric wall. Gufei glanced at the time. Electric wall could last up to 20 seconds. This lot had been convulsing for 6 seconds so far. In retrospect, when Gufei had cast the spell on a street in Yunjuan City, a few players that had touched its surface were able to retract their fingers upon contact, and none of them was held in place. Why was it that these Guardians? Is this the result of their increased surface contract? Gufei ruminated. These Guardians had their entire shield stuck within the electric wall. The surface area that came into contact with the electricity was significantly larger than mere fingers. However, electric wall's damage output was truly insignificant. These Guardians were being electrocuted by the wall of electricity all this while, but not one of them died from it yet. Gufei lamented this fact. even as his mana started recovering, just like what had happened during his fight with the mountain bandits yesterday. Looking down the street, he expectedly spotted Vast Lushness with her raised holy staff pointing toward him. The 10 Guild Alliance's men were already out of Burning Tree of 1,000 Infernos AO. The enemy priests were rushing to rescue their comrades from death, while the mages and archers began hurtling attacks toward Gufei. Gufei sprinted away, dodging the balls of fire of repeating fireball as he batted arrows with homing projectile away. With a quick lift of his finger, he disappeared from his current spot. These players from Y City were naturally unaware of Gufei possessing the advanced mage spell, Translocation, Blink, so each of them felt stunned when they witnessed his sudden disappearance before their eyes. Gufei had already reappeared right before them, yet these men were still looking for traces of him on the rooftop. Gufei slashed around him with twin incineration, and a circle of enemies fell. Electric Wall's duration finally ended, and when the row of guardians stopped convulsing, silence descended on them. Several men deeply sighed in relief, wanting to bawl their eyes out after such a harrowing experience. Sakurazaka Muni ordered his men to begin their assault once he saw that the enemy guardians had survived Electric Wall. Although these battle-hardened players were being thoroughly electrocuted moments ago, they also realized that their targets were near them and were mainly made up of archers. These men knew that although they were just guardians, they were more than capable of taking these archers down as long as they got into melee range. With such a thought in mind, these guardians raised their shields, and since they no longer had anyone behind them to protect, hunched their backs, and leaned forward, getting in position to activate their charge skill and dive right into the enemy's formation. However, these guardians only managed to raise their posterior and were not able to charge forward. Puzzled, they checked their status window and cursed aloud in unison, "Fuck, we're paralyzed." Arrows rained on them and struck their shields, causing the sound of clashing metal to reverberate. Fireball even made a grand show of casting spell on them. Without any priests to support them and being unable to use charge to close in on the archers, these guardians did not dare to creep forward like what they had done before, as they quickly backed to beat a hasty retreat. They only managed to take a few steps back when they heard crackling sound behind them. Turning to look, they trembled in terror. Another electric wall was erected right behind them. Gufei disappeared with a swish from within the enemy's formation. Before these guardians could react, fiery flames blazed on them. Gufei had appeared behind them and gifted them a sword slash powered by twin incineration. No matter how much armor these guardian equipped, there was still a limit to the amount of HP they possessed. They had survived all the accumulated damage dealt to them throughout this fight, but Gufei's twin incineration, which held unsurpassable power that could easily insta-kill players, was the straw that broke the camel's back. They were unable to withstand his final assault and died with tears flooding their eyes. "Are you guys alright?" Gufei turned to address Sakurazaka Muni and company after killing the enemy men. "We're fine, what could that handful of players do to us, anyway?" Sakurazaka Muni boasted, downplaying Gufei's timely aid. "Drunk bro, the enemies look like they're about to run away. Quickly show them your indomitable prowess," Fireball said. The enemies were indeed dispersing, yet Gufei merely shook his head. "Let them leave, I'm currently out of mana." With that, he addressed Vast Lushness next. "Seems like I didn't recover as much mana as yesterday." She replied helplessly, "You left my casting range when you charged far ahead." "Oh." Gufei felt dejected for a bit. He then asked, "What's this skill called?" "Mana Sacrifice." "It gifted my mana for you to use," Vast Lushness answered. "Oh." Gufei hummed in acknowledgement. Carefully looking at her eyes, he commented, "You seem to be in quite a good mood." Chapter 288, Giving Face to Gufei. The smile currently on Vast Lushness's face seemed to come from the heart, which made Gufei think that she was in a good mood. This was ironic. To be capable of smiling sincerely in the face of such a relentless hunt that lasted for an entire day and night. Had she gone insane? Gufei had never seen Vast Lushness smile like this before. When they first met in Y City, her lips were curled in arrogance and tyranny, and when they met again in Yunjuan City, Vast Lushness did not smile much beyond the few perfunctory smiles that were superficial at best and were obviously not heartfelt. With Gufei's comment, Sakurazaka Muni and his lot also came to this realization, especially Sakurazaka Muni. He had stuck his neck out for Vastlushness so much that he had managed to get in contact with her more often than Gufei had, fostering a deeper relationship that allowed him see that Vastlushness's current smile was indeed far from the usual ones she showed. Furthermore, this smile of hers had appeared repeatedly throughout this day and night. Sakurazaka Muni suddenly felt fuzzy inside. He could not help but ask, "You've been smiling like that this whole time. What are you happy about?" "Really? I'm smiling?" Vastlushness smiled coquettishly. Everyone was speechless. "Forget it. Let's just get out of here," Gufei said. Now that electric wall had completely disappeared, the remaining enemies were clamoring to return to this alley from the left and right streets leading to it. The 10 Guild Alliance's men had not actually retreated fully and had just temporarily halted their assault due to the troublesome Gufei's appearance. Knowing that this was a dead-end alley, they decided to wait it out at the two entryways leading to the lane. These men perked up once their targets walked out of the alley. Simultaneously, one of them was spamming the guild channel with 27,149. 27,149 is back. That was the name that the 10 Guild Alliance had given to the player who had helped them win the guild war against the Past Deeds Guild. Eventually, Dusky Cloud and his brothers had amassed a large number of men to the point that even the highest level guild out there would be unable to contain them. These men were actually from different guilds to begin with, and it was only the existence of Past Deeds Guild during Parallel Worlds Open Beta that had forced them to band together. Although they had since decimated Past Deeds, the brotherhood that they had found in one another did not end like that. They still considered one another as comrades and had even continued to lead their respective guilds together, eventually forming the current 10 Guild Alliance. Despite the system not having any way to guarantee their bond, they were still able to maintain the friendship that they had fostered all this while. Still, the lack of an effective way to disseminate information to all the 10 guilds in the alliance was truly a huge hassle. Just the 27,149 is back cry was broadcasted several times on the various guild channels and messily discussed by many members first before it reached the 10 Guild Alliance's figureheads. Everyone was clear on who the target for this hunt was, so 27,149's appearance created much hubbub. Those men who had personally participated in the guild war back then clearly remembered that 27,149 had been instrumental in the Past Deeds' demise. He was the hero that had ended Silver Moon, Vastlushness, and company's tyrannical reign in Y City, so none of them could fathom why 27,149 had a change of heart and was now standing on the enemy's side after just a month. As the head honcho of the 10 Guild Alliance, Dusky Cloud did not have to participate in the hunt for the targets himself. However, he started paying attention to this matter once he learned that 27,149 was intervening. With the 10 Guild Alliance's strength, there was essentially no need for it to provide preferential treatment to any player, but 27,149 was the only exception. Even the game officials had delegated him as their unofficial spokesperson with that promotional video, which had created quite the buzz in and out of Parallel World, even making people wonder if such an indomitable existence was the result of an unspoken nepotism. The lack of instructions from the upper echelons of the 10 Guild Alliance somewhat shows their indecision on how to proceed with the matter. As for the players who are currently in direct confrontation with 27,149, they all stared open-mouthed at Gufei, who was sprinting toward them while brandishing his sword. This player right here was a legend. Even the banana peel he had just discarded seemed to be executed rather nobly. Those blocking the streets involuntarily took a step backward, as the player in charge of them hurriedly asked on the guild channel, "Guild leader, what do we do now?" After a brief emergency discussion between the 10 guild leaders, this instruction was finally passed down: confirm the person's identity. "How do we do that?" the player asked. "Ask him," was the reply that the player received. The leader of the hunting team quickly acted accordingly. "Are you 27,149,000 miles drunk?" This name was probably listed in some unknown corner of the leaderboard, yet it was a name that was often mentioned by the entire player base. Gufei had no reason to deny his identity, so he simply nodded his head in response. Gufei's reply was swiftly reported to the top brasses. Yet his sword was mere inches away from the team leader's throat by the time the discussion of the superiors was completed and an instruction was issued accordingly: retreat. These men's rich experience PvPing under the 10 Guild Alliance's flag resulted into them developing a compliant personality to the upper echelon's will. As such, everyone turned to leave with just that one command from the top brasses: "Hey, why are you guys leaving?" Gufei got flustered. "Our boss's order." The team leader looked directly at Gufei while saying this. "They said we need to give face to Thousand Miles Drunk, so we'll let this matter go this time around." Gufei sighed regretfully. He had never expected such a development. Gufei was unsure if he still had time to retract his earlier affirmation, but he had nothing to lose trying. "Actually, I'm not him." The man halted his steps in shock and was very confused by the mage's vacillation. Obviously, they would continue their hunt if Gufei was not 27,149. It was clear that they had given him plenty of face by not doubting his claim, which allowed him to take advantage of the situation, so it absolutely made no sense for him to correct himself now. There was no lack of PvP maniacs in MMOs, but few were as passionate about fighting as Gufei. Gufei wanted to engage these players in PvP, while Fireball and the rest were hoping to escape with their shirts intact. Everyone sighed in relief when they heard that the enemies had decided to give Gufei face for this matter. But who would have guessed that Gufei would actually be so meddlesome? Seeing the enemy's hesitation, Fireball hurriedly jumped in front of Gufei and said, "Drunk bro, stop joking around like this. Anyone here can tell you're 27,149 upon witnessing your fighting prowess. Besides you, is there any other mage out there that can display such exquisite swordsmanship in a black mage robe, and that sharp long swow?" Scram! Gufei could not take his level of flattering. The enemy team leader smiled ever so slightly at this. Indeed, Gufei matched the rumored 27,149 to a T. He looked the part, acted the part, and was op enough. Even casting doubt on his identity and asking further questions were unnecessary. Who knew why he suddenly changed his mind about admitting to his identity? No matter how bold the 10 Guild Alliance's members were, they still had a little selfishness in them. Grinding was not easy, so no one was willing to lose a level unnecessarily, and they knew better than to clash with a formidable foe like Gufei. Even if they had to fight him, it would still be better to not take the lead in this. With such a selfish thought in mind, this team leader merely led the men away with a wave of his arm. The enemy players blocking the other entryway seemed to have received a similar command from their superiors as they also departed accordingly. Gufei disappointedly placed his sword back inside his dimensional pocket soundlessly. Sakura Zakamuni and his gang were dumbfounded. Gufei was apparently not only an expert skirt chaser, he was also in possession of godly gaming skill to the point where people would gladly give him face once his name was mentioned. These were people that had relentlessly pursued them for a full day and night as well. In their eyes, Gufei's awesomeness seemed to just grow more and more. Gufei helplessly shrugged his shoulders as he turned to look at them. "Looks like everything fine now. We should still be careful. Who knows if they have an ambush waiting for us outside this alley or even by the log-off points?" Sakura Zakamuni cautioned. "They won't." Vast Lushness refuted this, saying, "Although they are not exactly good guys, they are at least men of their words. Since they already said that they won't pursue this matter, then they really would uphold their word on account of Gufei today." MHM. Gufei merely hummed in agreement. Sword Demon and War Without Wounds, who were better acquainted with Dusky Cloud and his men, considered them to be upright and hot-blooded. As for Gufei, when he had first come into contact with Dusky Cloud, the latter had actually been attempting to lure him into an ambush. Man, a person's character is just way too complex. Sakura Zakamuni and company finally felt reassured when they heard this. Having run all over Y City for an entire day and night, they barely had any energy left to even talk with one another. Yet Sakura Zakamuni had just to ask Vast Lushness the question that had been plaguing his mind: just what sort of hatred do those guys have with you to actually go to such extent? Mobilizing hundreds of players to relentlessly hunt them down. This vendetta seemed to run deeper than Mariana's Trench. Vast Lushness simply replied, "It's nothing much. Just like today, I have been hunted down by them before." "Oh, did you belong to that what's it called guild in Y City, too?" Sakura Sakamuni asked. The large-scale guild war that had happened in Y City was still the most intense dispute in the history of Parallel World even now. It was rather famous, but because Sakura Sakamuni and his lot were not locals of Y City, they knew little about that event. Past deeds? Vast lushness Riley smiled. Although she was still looking at Sakura Sakamuni, her eyes seemed to glaze over ever so slightly. All went their separate ways when tragedy struck. What? While Sakura Sakamuni was confused by her answer, Gufei thoroughly got what she meant. He even figured out why Vast Lushness had been smiling sincerely throughout this whole ordeal. It was camaraderie. Sakura Sakamuni, Fireball. This bunch of reprehensible gamers was not hot-blooded or vehemently arrogant about facing death. They had simply worked hard together to deal with the sudden hunt that they had found themselves in, just like how they would diligently do their best to woo a beautiful lady that they met on the street. Be it getting hunted by others or wooing beautiful women. They thought of everything as nothing more than slapstick entertainment that spiced up their lives. They were comrades, a bunch of comrades playing this game in search of pleasure and fun. Chapter 289, Somber Drinking. It was just as Vast Lushness had said. Dusky Cloud and his lot were indeed men of their words. Gufei and company walked down the streets under the watchful gazes of Y City's players, yet no one gave them a hard time. Some players even looked familiar, as if they were among those who had closely pursued Sakura Sakamuni and his lot just moments ago, now walking no more than 5 meters apart from one another. Sakura Sakamuni was still on guard against these men. Yet those players instead began chatting with them casually. "Are you guys logging off? Let's go together." Someone even warmly invited. "Motherfuckers. What a bunch of dickwads." Sakura Sakamuni and his gang did not know whether to cry or laugh at this absurd situation. They were totally drained from running all day and night, and those people pursuing them all this while were naturally not in a better shape. The 10 Guild Alliance might have been able to swap the players out easily, given how many members it had, yet some of the faces Sakura Sakamuni was currently seeing belonged to those men that had tenaciously been on their tail from start to finish. Sakura Sakamuni's team lost 20 members as a result of this, but the losses of the 10 Guild Alliance far surpassed that number. Most of them were killed off by Sakura Sakamuni and company's occasional volley of arrows when they got ensnared by the traps. "Let's log off and rest up, then." Sakura Sakamuni and the gang made a beeline for the spawn point. "What about tonight's mission?" Gufei asked, perplexed. All the mercenary groups were supposed to rendezvous with Traversing 4 Seas in an hour to resume their journey toward the next in-game city. Was Sakura Sakamuni giving up on this mission just for his mercenary group to be able to rest up and sleep in reality? "Drunk bro. Didn't you hear from your mercenary group leader? We are temporarily staying over in Y City tonight. Seems like they have an important matter to attend to over here before we can continue the expedition." "Is that so? What business is that?" Gufei asked. "I don't know about that. I've been on the run all this while. Where would I find the time to meet with them?" Sakura Sakamuni answered. "Oh, I'll see you guys later, then." Gufei bid them goodbye with a wave of his hand. Why would he log off now when he just got online a while ago? With that, this bunch of people continued to head toward the nearest spawn point. Gufei had seen plenty of players showing dissatisfied looks after getting kicked, yet these reprehensible men were unexpectedly very open-minded about such matters. A person's character is just too complex. Gufei sighed to himself. With this matter resolved, Gufei was just about to acquire himself a bounty mission from the bounty assignment hall when he was alerted by the system of a new message. It was from Sword Demon. "Dusky Cloud is treating us to a round of drinks and is specifically mentioning you. Mind coming over for a bit?" That was quick. Gufei thought to himself. He reckoned Dusky Cloud would promptly contact Sword Demon to find out what was going on the moment he caught wind of Thousand Miles Drunk extricating Sakura Sakamuni and company from their predicament. After fighting side by side in that previous guild war in Y City, Dusky Cloud and Sword Demon had added each other as friends. Hearing that Sword Demon and his fellow mercenaries were in Y City once more, Dusky Cloud saw it fit to receive them properly as the de facto overlord of the city. Sword Demon and War Without Wounds had a good impression of Dusky Cloud, so it was unlikely for them to reject his offer. Royal God Call and Brother Assist did not have a particular opinion about him, but since this was a treat, they had no reason to miss it. As for young Master Han, The fact that he did not see eye to eye with Dusky Cloud only gave him more incentive to take up his offer. Gufei reckoned young Master Han would make it a point to drink more than his fill just to hurt Dusky Cloud through his pockets. Gufei originally did not wish to join in on the fun, but thinking that Dusky Cloud and his gang had only let off vast lushness, Sakurazaka and company on his account today, he could not tell for sure what tomorrow would bring. While half of the Great Hunting's members managed to survive today, the 10 Guild Alliance might just hunt them down with greater ferocity than their hunt for the past deeds members if he did not respond to Dusky Cloud's offer appropriately. I better head over there and find out Dusky Cloud and the rest's plan of action, Gufei told himself. Getting the location from Sword Demon, he made his way over to the tavern. Y City did not have any player-operated tavern like Ray's Bar in Yunjuan City, so Dusky Cloud just chose the largest establishment in the heart of the city to hold the welcome party. Being the overlord that he was, all the tavern patrons vacated the premise once he entered the tavern. The system-designated tavern owner continued to conduct business as usual and attended to the remaining players, obviously not bothered by the sudden departure of a large bulk of customers. When Gufei reached the tavern, the place was already jam-packed with people from the 10 Guild Alliance. He even saw the team leader that he had exchanged words with earlier occupying a table, along with a few others that had died by his sword moments ago. Every member of Young Master's elite was indeed present, sitting around a few small tables that were dragged together to form a large one. Dusky Cloud and a few others, whom Gufei could currently not recall the names of but reckoned were also leaders of the 10 Guild Alliance, were sitting with Young Master's elite. The 10 Guild Alliance should at least have 10 guild leaders as well, right? The whole tavern grew quiet with Gufei's arrival. Sword Demon and the rest raised their hands to greet him. Dusky Cloud demonstrated the nimbleness that a thief possessed by reaching Gufei in a few quick steps. With a handshake and a pat on the back, Dusky Cloud showed his pleasure to Gufei's presence. "You're finally here, bro. Come, let's take a seat." Gufei followed him to the table everyone was occupying, took off the piece of cloth covering his face, and sat on a seat. Dusky Cloud offered a glass of liquor to Gufei, who received it with a word of thanks. The liquor he had received was the very best, noting that the others were also enjoying the same sort of liquor. Their table was not treated any differently from the rest alcohol-wise. Young Master Han took this opportunity to drink as much as he could. Dusky Cloud did not seem to mind his behavior in the least, merely ordering a few more bottles for the table when he discovered how much the man was enjoying himself. Gufei even saw Brother Assist lift his fingers while watching young Master Han drink. He chuckled to himself as he realized that Brother Assist must have nothing better to do than to calculate how much money young Master Han had drunk away in this sitting. Honestly speaking, besides fighting a guild war together in Parallel Worlds open beta days, not everyone on this table was familiar with Young Master's elite. Once Gufei sat down, Dusky Cloud and his brothers immediately expressed their admiration for Gufei's fighting prowess and such. Gufei felt obligated to humbly thank them for their kind words. Dusky Cloud and his men might be uninhibitedly heroic when it came to PvPing, but speaking to strangers was evidently not their strong suit. They usually spoke bluntly with one another and their words were peppered with expletives every few sentences. They quickly hit it off among themselves upon realizing that they shared this common quirk. Although some of these individuals held high positions, their way of speaking was all the same, so it was practically impossible to differentiate one man from another if anyone shut his or her eyes. These leaders' casual uncouthness was highly incompatible when they were meeting people for the first time. However, removing the expletives in their speech would just cause these men to be at a loss for words. When the formal introductions ended, not one person around the table spoke, creating a very awkward atmosphere. This situation persisted for several minutes. Eventually, Dusky Cloud lifted his glass and stood up. "That's Old Cloud for ya." The other 9 leaders were very excited, gazing at him rather expectantly. "Cheers, everyone," Dusky Cloud announced. "Fucking motherfucker, you're so useless, Old Cloud." They did not expect for Dusky Cloud to stand up and spout such inconsequential nonsense, so they eyed him contemptuously. Dusky Cloud was obviously feeling awkward himself. He did not know what else to say after downing the entire content of a whole glass. He had easily found a topic to discuss with Sword Demon thanks to the latter being an avid gamer like himself and sharing the same job class. Right now, Dusky Cloud could not find any possible topic to discuss with Gufei, and the only question he could come up with after thinking for a while was, "Miles bro, what type of games did you play before Parallel World?" "I hardly played any games before," Gufei admitted. If Silver Moon were in Dusky Cloud's position right now, he would surely follow up that question with, "So you're practically a newbie when it comes to playing MMO yet you're already this good? What a genius." He would then keep the conversation going by supplementing it with a whole batch of flattering words. As for this bunch of men, Gufei's lack of any gaming history to speak of only served to widen the language barrier between them. All drank their liquor by themselves as a result, while the host Dusky Cloud felt extremely embarrassed at how things had turned out. He regretted calling this bunch of useless idiots along for this. He should have brought those players that were great at livening up the atmosphere. Instead, Dusky Cloud got pissed when he thought of this. Slapping the table, he said, "Motherfucking Celestial Pig, don't you usually have a lot to say? Why are you so quiet today?" Celestial Pig scratched his head for a bit. Looking at Gufei, he finally blurted out, "Didn't you slay me before?" Dusky Cloud almost keeled over and fainted. "I asked you to say something, yet you actually said something so acrimonious." Every inch of him really wished to drag the idiot out to the back and shoot him in the back of his head. Unexpectedly, Gufei nodded his head in agreement. "I think I did." "Were you together with No Smile at the time?" "Speaking of which, it's been a long time since I last saw that guy." He glanced at the men around him as he said this, but these men coincidentally brought their glass to their mouths. They looked as if they were contented with just watching the show unfold. "Oh, he isn't around," Dusky Cloud said, slightly embarrassed. No Smile was online, but Dusky Cloud did not call him over. Anyway, he was certain that No Smile would not willingly turn up even if he requested for the latter to be present. No Smile had lost a total of 10 levels when Gufei had hunted him down in the past. However, the number of experience points he had lost for those 10 levels was equivalent to dropping from level 40 to level 39, it really was not much. Despite this, the impact of Gufei's action on No Smile had been huge. No Smile was still reluctant to offer his name when someone asked for it even to this day, just like how Fireball was. To those players who were aware of that past incident, No Smile's name was synonymous with loser. No matter how formidable he became in the future, he would forever be that loser 1,000 miles drunk had once dropped by 10 levels. No Smile's hatred for Gufei was something that could not easily be reconciled. Even recalling the psychological damage Gufei had inflicted on him was painful for No Smile. This was precisely why Dusky Cloud felt awkward. Being a good friend of No Smile's, not only did he fail to avenge his humiliation, he was even currently sharing the same table and drinks with Gufei. There was nothing he could do about this, though. While Dusky Cloud wanted to help No Smile slay Gufei, No Smile was not exactly well regarded by his friends. Out of the other 9 guild leaders present, 8 essentially did not care for his existence, while the moron Celestial Pig had no opinion of him either way. Just his previous question to Gufei moments ago showed his lack of tact. Even Dusky Cloud himself could not understand how he had become such good friends with No Smile. Evidently, the impression these two players had of each other in the other MMOs they had played together in the past was entirely supplemented by their wishful thinking of each other. It was not so easy to hide the player's real personality in this fully immersive environment, since Parallel World was a VRMO that allowed them to come face to face with one another. Now that Dusky Cloud had personally met No Smile in Y City, the thought of helping the latter constantly wavered. Chapter 290, Vicious Words from Young Master Han. While Dusky Cloud was recalling the past he had shared with No Smile, Celestial Pig actually latched onto the topic of being killed by Gufei and ran with it. Gufei had slain him outside Yunduan City to save Vast Lushness back then. Because of what Celestial Pig and his men were doing to Vast Lushness, he did not have a particularly good impression of him. However, Celestial Pig's act of raising this issue naturally led to a topic about Vast Lushness, which was exactly perfect for Gufei. At that time, Celestial Pig and his men did not know that Gufei was fugitive 27,149. Now that they were aware of this, Dusky Cloud could more or less deduce why Gufei had saved Vastlochnes today. Vastlochnes had really been reduced into a terrible state by their relentless hunt for her. That woman was inherently stubborn, though. Despite being reduced into a terrible state, she still maintained her arrogance in the face of so many men, which only made it difficult for them to hold back and treat Vastlochnes in a way that was befitting her gender. In actuality, the reason why their hatred for Vastlochnes had lasted until now was that she had an attitude that seemed to be begging for trouble. Vastlochnes's foolhardy spirit despite her losses had completely awakened their desire to destroy her, hunting her down for almost a whole month. Their patience to exact their vengeance even after such a long time was pretty much forged as a result of her actions. In contrast, those who were not in the know could easily sympathize with Vastlochnes's plight. However, Dusky Cloud felt that Gufei should have been on their side. After all, he had been forced to hide inside a high-level grinding map back then as a result of unintentionally offending her. Hence, he could not fathom how Vastlochnes's stubborn personality had managed to garner sympathy from Gufei when it had not affected him at all. As Dusky Cloud was wondering about this, Celestial Pig once more unintentionally helped him get the answer. "Miles bro, when did you become good friends with Vastlochnes? Hee, just leave her some leeway. Is there really a need for you guys to be so thorough in tormenting her?" Instead of answering Celestial Pig's question, Gufei directly pleaded for her case. Sword Demon and the others exchanged furtive looks when they heard him. The Gufei that they knew was a merciless killer, yet here he was, asking others to stay their hands. It was pretty hilarious. "Miles bro, as a good friend of ours, we are really hoping that you won't interfere in this matter," Dusky Cloud requested. He had invited young Masters Elite over for drinks mainly because he wanted to thank them for their assistance in the guild war back then and partly because he wanted to ask Gufei why he was lending Vastlochnes a hand. "Unfortunately, I have already interfered," Gufei sighed, glancing over to a certain table. "I might have slain a few friends over there earlier." Dusky Cloud was nationally aware of this, and he too swept his gaze over to that particular table. "We'll let it go. I believe my men won't mind, either. As for Vastlochnes, we'll put it behind us, as well. After being chased for a whole day and night, I'm sure those guys won't mind this resolution, either," Gufei quipped, adding on to Dusky Cloud's words. Dusky Cloud was stunned for a good while. He had never expected for a handful of players to actually object over the 10 Guild Alliance's hunt for Vastlochnes. In Y City, those who found themselves being targeted by the 10 Guild Alliance could only blame their luck. These people might object to it in their minds, but they could never use it as a bargaining chip in the negotiating table. The difference in strength of the clashing parties was essentially day and night. "What does Boss Cloud think of it?" Seeing that Dusky Cloud was in a daze, he quickly inquired after it. Dusky Cloud could currently not come up with an answer. He had no wish to give up their hunt for Vastlochnes at all, and he invited Gufei over in hopes of stopping him from interfering. He felt that they had already given him plenty of face by backing off earlier today, yet who would have thought that Gufei would be so obtuse, using those few players' objection to the circumstance as a bargaining chip. While the 10 Guild Alliance's objection held a lot of weight with their strength, Gufei and those handful of men's objection was almost nothing in comparison. "Speaking of which, we are only here temporarily, and we will be leaving Y City tomorrow," Gufei informed. "Ah, yes. I've heard about that," Dusky Cloud answered. As the pseudo-overlord of Y City, the appearance of a large number of players was something he had long been informed about. Sending men to inquire about their presence, he learned that this was an escort mission involving the #1 guild and top mercenary groups in Yunjuan City. "Regarding Vastlochnes, what will Miles bro do if we don't let her have?" Dusky Cloud asked instead. He had no intention of backing down from this. Although Gufei was a fearsome opponent, he was just one man. There were 2 level 5, 4 level 4, 3 level 3, and 1 level 2 guilds, for a total of 4,550 members, within the 10 Guild Alliance. After all, he had only asked his men to stop today's chase due to Gufei's connection with them. His men happened to not have the word fear in their vocabulary, something that they had in common with vast lushness. It was such a pity that these two headstrong parties were poised against each other. Obviously, neither party was willing to back down now that it had escalated to this point. It can't be helped, then Gufei sighed, saying, "Guess I'll just continue giving them a hand and slay a few more of your comrades." "Miles bro, you're so straightforward. I deeply admire such a trait in a man." "Then, let's not go easy on one another when we meet on the fighting field, but let's remain friends outside of that," Dusky Cloud declared. "That would be for the best." Gufei was extremely gratified. Being able to slay people and not affect their relationship. This was possibly the most ideal resolution to park maniacs like him. "Cheers to that." Dusky Cloud raised his glass. "Cheers." Gufei lifted his glass and clinked it against Dusky Cloud's, finishing its content in one gulp. "Awesome!" Dusky Cloud shouted heartily. His fellow brothers also commended his resolution of the matter. It seemed that only Sword Demon and the others of Young Master's elite felt discomfited about this. Just what sort of negotiation was this? The two parties did not achieve their goal, yet they instead reached an agreement where both sides could kill one another without repercussions. "I say, Boss Cloud, why are you guys so focused on bullying a woman while Silver Moon can strut around freely?" A cold voice suddenly pierced through the room's din, which belonged to none other than young Master Han. He could no longer stand the silly negotiation. Gufei and Dusky Cloud had come to an accord and finally said his piece. Dusky Cloud showed great forbearance at this. Among the six-man mercenary group, he despised young Master Han the most. Were it not for young Master Han being friends with Sword Demon and the others, Dusky Cloud would willingly slay him 100 times. Dusky Cloud was not two-faced. After all, his feelings got the better of him and he openly expressed his disdain for young Master Han without mirth. "What do you mean by that, bro?" Young Master Han swirled his glass leisurely, yet his eyes remained focused, not bothering to look at Dusky Cloud. "Silver Moon is currently in Y City. Does Boss Cloud not know about this?" "Silver Moon is here as well? Are you serious?" Dusky Cloud truly had no clue about this. Hee. "Do you guys have selective blindness?" Young Master Han's mouth curled icily, holding nothing back to disparage these men with every inflection of his words. Quite a few men even jumped up and slammed their fists on the table. "Damn you! What are you insinuating?" "Nothing. I've drunk too much. Guess I'll take my leave first." Young Master Han stood up and waved at the tavern owner. "Boss, bill please." "No need, it's my treat," Dusky Cloud said. Although he did not like young Master Han at all, he had no desire to be labeled as an improper host over this bit of money. "No need, just allow me to be included in your selective blindness as well," young Master Han said mockingly as he took out his coin purse. "Fuck." Another guild leader could no longer stand young Master Han's taunts. He got up to attack him, but the table somewhat hindered him from using a skill. So he opted to just grab a bottle off the table and tossed it over. Gufei was just about to lend a hand, but Sword Demon, who was currently beside young Master Han, was much faster. Lifting his hand to bat the bottle away, he simply said, "Forget it." "Yeah." Gufei agreed, "He's like this, it's really annoying." "That's right. He's not skilled when it comes to combat, so he can only focus his effort on his mouth." Royal God Call used this chance to take a few shots at young Master Han. "Oh, yeah, he's super arrogant." War Without Wounds was probably still sulking over being assigned as a bodyguard for young Master Han and Brother Assist during the mercenary PvP tournament. Only Brother Assist was considerate enough to not say anything negative about him. Dusky Cloud also stood up. Restraining the guild leader that had acted moments ago, he lightly said, "So be it. I won't see you out." Young Master Han raised an eyebrow before saying, "No need to see me out. I suggest you spend that time looking for Silver Moon. Instead, it'll at least be more productive than chasing after a girl." "Ugh, can't you just keep quiet?" Young Master's Elite's mercenary channel burst into activity. "Just one last thing." Young Master Han typed this on the mercenary channel. He was almost out of the establishment, with his hand pushing the door halfway open, when he glanced at the bunch of men eyeing him with fury and said, "That woman is just a priest, too." Fuck. Even more men jumped to their feet. Yet Dusky Cloud stopped them from acting with his eyes. "We won't mind if you organize a hunting party for him," War Without Wound sincerely said. Dusky Cloud laughed bitterly before gazing up the ceiling. "He's not wrong, you know. Vast Lushness is indeed just a female priest. It's really meaningless to kill her." With that, he addressed the remaining 5 men. "Is Silver Moon really in Y City?" The 5 of them nodded their heads with Gufei, saying, "I can lend you guys a hand if you decide to hunt for Silver Moon." "What?" Dusky Cloud was surprised to see his different attitude. Naturally, the rumors about Silver Moon shirking responsibility had not reached Y City yet. Everyone here knew the pair's story inside and out, so they did not feel the need to learn more about the two's epilogue. Dusky Cloud and his men continued to lump Silver Moon and Vast Lushness together since they did not know of the ensuing fallout after the past deed's collapse. After Gufei gave them a brief rundown of Silver Moon's actions, the entire tavern bubbled into fervor. "Fuck me. Silver Moon is such a bastard. A fucking coward to the very end. That shameless person. To think I once considered him as a man's man like us. Shameless." "Nothing more needs to be said about this. Let's just slay him. Slay him." Dusky Cloud slapped the table decisively. "Call all our brothers online to search the entire city for Silver Moon. Anyone who provides any leads about this will be properly rewarded."